They say your life can change in a second. Some lightning bolt moment, some random twist of fate, BM, and everything you thought you knew burns to the ground. Well, I didn't get a lightning bolt. I got something slower. Something crueler. Like the ground under me just gave way inch by inch. And before I even realized it, I was falling. At 27 years old, I was broke. I mean, sleeping in my car, scrounging change for coffee broke. I had no job, no girlfriend, no home. The dreams I once shouted from rooftops as a kid gone, vanished like smoke. Most days, I wandered around this little park downtown, sitting on the same worn-out bench, pretending to read books I stole from the library just so I could stay out of the rain. I remember thinking one afternoon, is this it? Is this what they meant by adulthood? The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the shame. The deep, rotting feeling that somehow I'd messed up so bad there was no climbing out. I still remember the exact moment it all hit me, the crash. It was a Thursday, gray skies sagging low over the city, and I was at the gas station bathroom washing my face in that grimy, cracked mirror. When I looked up, I barely recognized the man staring back. Bloodshot eyes. Hollow cheeks. Dirty hoodie. I whispered to my reflection, "You're nobody. You're nothing." And in that tiny, ugly bathroom, I broke. I slid down the wall and cried, ugly heaving sobs that no one else saw. In that moment, I honestly thought, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And if life had been fair, that might have been the end of my story. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom, sometimes it's the only place strong enough to push off from. It happened 2 days later. I hadn't eaten in almost 48 hours and I was sitting at that same park bench, head in my hands, when an old man shuffled by. He looked like he belonged in a painting, worn leather jacket, gray beard, crooked cane. His eyes were sharp. He stopped, looked down at me and smiled. "You look like you could use a sandwich," he said. I could barely nod. He laughed, a real belly laugh, and motioned for me to follow him. Now, I know what you're thinking, stranger danger, right? But when you're desperate, you don't think that way. You hope. You pray. So I followed. We ended up at this little diner tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. One of those places with cracked red booths and a buzzing neon sign that said breakfast all day. He ordered 2 coffees and 2 club sandwiches without even asking me what I wanted. As we waited, he asked my name. "Eli," I said. He told me his, "Sam." And then he asked me a question I'll never forget. "Eli, do you want to keep dying like this? Or are you ready to start living?" That question, do you want to keep dying like this? Or are you ready to start living? It hit me like a punch in the gut. I stared at Sam, not sure if I was supposed to laugh or cry. I mean, who says stuff like that to a total stranger? But the way he said it, calm, steady, like he already knew what I was gonna say. I looked down at my cracked hands and whispered, "I don't know how to live anymore." Sam nodded like he understood. Then he leaned in and said, "Good. That means you're empty. And empty vessels can be filled." Right then, the waitress dropped off our food. My sandwich was a mountain of turkey, bacon, and love, and I swear I almost cried when I took the first bite. We sat mostly in silence while I ate like it was my first real meal in months. Sam just sipped his coffee, watching people pass outside the foggy diner window. After I finished, he slid a folded napkin across the table. On it was an address. No explanation, just that and a name scribbled at the bottom, Tommy. "Go there tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Tell Tommy I sent you. He'll put you to work." I blinked. Work? Yep. Hard work. Construction crew. Dirty. Hot. Long hours. But it's honest. And you need honest right now more than you need comfortable. I stared at the napkin like it might burn a hole through the table. Part of me didn't believe him. Part of me thought it was a setup or a joke. But another part, the part that still held onto some tiny thread of hope, told me this could be the start of something. Then Sam stood up. "I'll pay for the meal," he said. "But the rest, that's on you." He winked, tapped his cane on the tile, and shuffled out the door into the cold. And just like that, he was gone. That night, I didn't sleep in my car. I couldn't. I sat there in the driver's seat, napkin in my lap, just thinking. What if this was real? What if this was the break I'd been begging for? But that little demon voice in my head kept whispering. "You'll mess it up, just like everything else. You don't deserve another chance." I almost crumpled up the napkin and tossed it out the window. Almost. But instead, I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. The next morning, I showed up at the address, a dusty warehouse lot on the edge of town. Big guys in boots were hauling lumber, loading trucks, yelling over the noise of drills and hammers. I walked up to a guy in a flannel shirt, hard hat, and thick beard. I'm looking for Tommy." The man turned. "Who's a skin?" "Eli. Sam sent me." His face changed like I just said the magic words. "Follow me," he said. He led me to a metal trailer office where an older guy sat behind a desk, chain-smoking and muttering into a walkie-talkie. That was Tommy. Tommy looked me up and down. So, you're Sam Stray. I started to speak, but he cut me off. Don't care who you were. Don't care what you did. You show up early, you work hard, you keep your mouth shut, you'll get paid. Miss a day, show up high, steal anything, and you're gone. Understand? I nodded. Hard. He tossed me a pair of worn gloves and pointed toward a pile of rebar. Start dragging that to the flatbed. We pour concrete at noon. And just like that, I had a job. I worked 10 hours that day, nearly collapsed from the heat and exhaustion. My hands bled. My back screamed. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt alive. And that night, when I opened my envelope and saw my name written on it, my name with $82 cash inside, I cried again. But this time, they weren't hopeless tears. They were grateful. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like nothing. I felt like a man becoming someone. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of 5 a.m. alarms, steel-toed boots, and muscles I didn't know I had screaming at me by sundown. I worked like a man possessed, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something. Pouring concrete, hoisting beams, hauling bricks in the sun. The work was brutal, yeah, but it made me feel real. Solid. Like each blister on my hand was a receipt for progress. Tommy never said much, but he noticed. I could tell by the way he started nodding at me in the mornings or how he'd toss me a water bottle with a grunt that almost sounded like, good job. That was high praise in construction language. The guys on the crew started warming up to me too. They'd joke around, share smokes, throw me scraps of advice in between jobs. For a man who had felt invisible for so long, those small things were everything. I still didn't know why Sam had helped me. He hadn't come back around, hadn't shown up at the job site or called. Honestly, I wasn't even sure how to find him again. But I kept the napkin he gave me tucked into my wallet like a lucky charm. Some days I'd pull it out and look at his name, half wondering if I made the whole thing up. One Friday after shift, Tommy walked up and said, "You got plans tonight?" I shook my head. "Good. Meet me at O'Malley's. 7 o'clock. Don't be late." He walked off before I could ask what was going on. That night, I showed up in my one decent shirt, still a little wrinkled from living in the back seat of my car, but I tried to make it work. O'Malley's was this dim little pub with faded sports jerseys on the wall and a jukebox that only played Springsteen and Johnny Cash. Tommy was already at the bar with a beer in hand and an empty seat next to him. "Didn't think you'd actually show," he said, smirking. I shrugged. "Didn't think you actually liked me?" He snorted. "I don't. But Sam does." Just hearing his name hit me in the chest. "You know him well?" Tommy looked down at his glass for a long moment. "Yeah. Known him over 20 years. Me and a lot of other guys. He's a bit of a legend in our world." "What do you mean?" I asked. Tommy leaned in a little like he was about to share a secret. "Sam was homeless. Just like you. Worse, maybe. Used to sleep behind the very diner he took you to. Most people walked past him like he was trash. But one guy, a contractor, gave him a shot. No questions asked. Put a hammer in his hand and said, 'Prove you want this.' I sat back, stunned. Tommy went on. He worked his way up. Started running his own crews, then opened a few businesses. But here's the thing, he never forgot where he came from. Started this quiet little mission of his, finds guys on the edge like you and gives them a way back." I stared at my beer, my throat tight. "Why me?" Tommy shrugged. "Only Sam can answer that. But if I had to guess, he saw something in you. Something familiar." I didn't say much after that. Just sat there letting it all soak in. The man who gave me a sandwich, who offered me a second chance without asking for anything in return, he knew that darkness. He'd lived it. I walked home that night differently. Not like someone climbing out of a hole, but like someone walking a path one step at a time with purpose. And the next morning, something changed. I got to the site early, sun just starting to peek over the rooftops, and found a brown paper bag on the hood of my car. Inside was a thermos of coffee and a sandwich, same as the one from that diner. Tucked underneath was a note in tight, looping script. "Keep going. Proud of you. Sam." I held the note to my chest, the scent of cheap deli meat in the air, and felt something swell inside me. Not pride, not even hope, but belief. He believed in me. And for the first time in my life, I was starting to believe in me too. Things were good. Not perfect, not easy, but good. That alone felt like a miracle. I'd saved enough to rent a tiny studio apartment above a thrift store on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, a sink that leaked, a window that wouldn't close all the way, and a mattress on the floor. But it was mine. No more car sleep, no more hiding in gas station bathrooms. For the first time in years, I could lock a door behind me and breathe. Every morning I'd climb into my beat-up Chevy, throw on some Johnny Cash, and head to the site. Hammer in hand, sweat on my brow, earning my keep. I started training newer guys Tommy brought on, mostly young, twitchy kids who had that same hollow look I used to carry in my eyes. I saw pieces of myself in them. Sometimes I'd bring 2 sandwiches, just in case. One Tuesday afternoon, while we were pouring concrete for a foundation, Tommy waved me over. "Lunch break," he said, handing me a bottle of water. "Also, someone's here to see you." I turned around and froze. Standing just outside the fence was my brother, Nate. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. He looked about the same, tall, square-jawed, always dressed like he was on his way to a meeting, even though I knew he worked sales and spent most of his time driving between towns. His eyes were colder, though. Less forgiving. "You gonna come out or what?" he called. Tommy gave me a nod. "Take your time." I stepped outside the fence, wiping sweat from my forehead with a rag. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He gave me a once-over. "Heard from Mom you were working construction. Figured I'd see it with my own eyes." I clenched my jaw. "Why?" "Because the last time I saw you, you were stealing from her purse and lying about rehab." His words hit like bricks. But they weren't wrong. "I'm not that guy anymore," I said quietly. He crossed his arms. "So you got a job and now you're cured?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to prove anything to him. "I'm not here to fight," Nate finally said. "I came to say, I'm glad you're alive." I didn't think I'd ever see that again. I looked at him, the brother who used to carry me on his shoulders, who bailed me out more times than I could count. I thought he hated me. Maybe he did. Maybe part of him still did. But here he was. "Thanks," I said, barely able to get the word out. He handed me a small envelope. "From Mom. A photo of Dad. She thought you should have it." Then he turned, walked back to his car, and drove away. I stood there for a long time, envelope clutched in my hand. Back inside the car, I opened it. It was a photo I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, Dad in his army uniform, standing tall, proud, before life had broken him. Before cancer. Before silence swallowed him whole. I ran my thumb over his face and felt the ache of old wounds not quite healed. That night in my apartment, I sat with that photo and thought about everything. My brother. My past. Sam. The guys on the crew. The road I'd walked and the one I still had ahead. I pulled out a notebook I kept tucked under my mattress. The first page had one word written in big, shaky letters: rebuild. I turned to a clean sheet and wrote, "Find the next Eli." Sam found me when I didn't even know I was worth saving. And now maybe it was my turn. To find someone just as lost. Just as hungry. Just as broken, and show them they could start again. It didn't matter if I wore a hard hat instead of a halo. I was building lives now, not just walls. And maybe that was the most sacred work of all. It started with a kid named Jesse. He showed up one raw Monday morning wearing a sweatshirt 3 sizes too big and shoes held together with duct tape. He kept his eyes glued to the ground, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. The guys gave him a few side eyes, muttered under their breath. New blood didn't last long around here. Construction wasn't for the soft. Tommy spotted me across the lot, jerked his thumb toward Jesse. "He's yours," he said. I walked over, extending a hand. "Eli." Jesse barely looked up. His hand was a nervous, limp thing in mine. "Jesse," he muttered. First hour on the job, he dropped a box of nails. Second hour, he mismeasured a beam by 6 inches. Tommy barked and grumbled, but he didn't throw him out, and that was grace enough. I hung close to Jesse all morning, showing him the right grip on a hammer, how to line up a 2x4 without it slipping. At lunch, I found him sitting alone behind the shed, eating nothing. I sat down next to him and unwrapped an extra sandwich I'd packed out of pure instinct. "Hungry?" He hesitated, then took it with both hands like he thought I might snatch it back. He bit into it so fast he almost choked. We sat there in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. Sometimes words get in the way of survival. After a few minutes, Jesse said, so low I almost didn't catch it, "Been sleeping behind the bus station." I just nodded like he told me the weather. Inside, though, my chest tightened. I remembered those nights too well. Shivering, counting coins, hoping no one would notice me curled up in the shadows. "You're here now," I said. "It gets better." He stared at me like he wanted to believe it, but didn't know how. That night, after the shift ended, I tracked Tommy down. Found him inside the trailer office, nursing a cup of burned coffee. "Kid's got nowhere to go," I said. Tommy grunted. Not our problem. It could be, I said. It was someone's problem when I showed up. He looked at me long and hard, then sighed. Tell him if he's here by 5 a.m. tomorrow, we'll talk. The next morning, Jesse was there before me, shivering in the pre-dawn dark. Tommy handed him a broom. Start with cleanup. We'll see what you're made of. And Jesse got to work. Quiet, fierce, like his life depended on it, which it probably did. Over the next few weeks, I watched Jesse start to change. The first paycheck he got, he asked if there was a cheap place to stay. I connected him with a guy I knew, a retired foreman renting out a spare room for next to nothing. Not the Ritz, but it had 4 walls and a lock on the door. You'd have thought we handed him the keys to a palace. Every morning after that, Jesse showed up earlier, worked harder, asked better questions. He stopped flinching every time someone raised their voice. He laughed more. He bought himself Real work boots with his second paycheck. Watching him lace them up with those thin, battered hands, it about broke me. One Friday after a long shift, Jesse and I were sitting on the back of a flatbed, letting the sunset burn the sky down to embers. He turned to me and said, "You saved my life, man." I shook my head. "Nah, you did the hard part. You showed up. You stayed." He stared at the ground for a minute. "Nobody's ever seen me before." "Not really. You did." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Sam saw me first, just passing it on." Jesse looked confused but smiled anyway. A real smile this time, full of something close to hope. And sitting there, breathing in the scent of sawdust and diesel and the raw, beautiful ache of a day's work, I realized something big, something that made my hands shake a little. This was it. This was the ripple Sam had talked about without ever saying a word. One life touches another, and another, and another, not through speeches, not through grand gestures, through sandwiches, through steady hands, through showing up. Sam's story wasn't over. It was alive, and now it was flowing through me. Life has a funny way of testing you right when you start to believe you're standing on solid ground. It happened on a Thursday, ordinary morning. I showed up early like always, the sky still pink and gold, the world yawning awake. Jesse was already there, sweeping out the supply shed, earbuds in, bobbing his head to music only he could hear. I was halfway through my coffee when Tommy came stomping across the lot, face like a thundercloud. "Eli," he barked. "Office. Now." My heart dropped. I couldn't think of anything I'd done wrong. I tossed my cup, wiped my hands, and followed him. Inside the trailer, the air was heavy. Tommy slammed a piece of paper down on the desk. I leaned over and read it. A police report. Burglary. Attempted theft. The name on the report made my stomach flip. Jesse. Caught trying to boost a power drill from the back of the shed last night. Security camera caught the whole thing. Tommy's face was a stone mask. "What do you want me to do, Eli?" "Huh?" I gave him a chance. "You gave him a chance. And he spit on it." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Part of me wanted to beg, plead. Tell Tommy it wasn't what it looked like. Tell him Jesse was scared, hungry, desperate, just like I had been. Tell him he just needed more time. But deep down, a harder truth was pounding inside my chest. Jesse had made a choice, just like I had once upon a time. And sometimes, you have to hit your own bottom. No one can save you if you're not ready to save yourself. Tommy stood there, waiting for me to say something, anything. Finally, I took a deep breath and nodded. "You gotta let him go." Tommy's shoulders dropped a fraction, like he hadn't wanted to be the bad guy either. "He can't stay here, Eli," he said softer. "It ain't personal. It's survival." I left the office feeling like I'd swallowed broken glass. I found Jesse sitting behind the shed, picking at a splinter on the curb. He looked up when he saw me coming, guilt-ridden all over his face. "I screwed up," he said before I could speak. I sat down beside him. "Yeah," I said. "You did." He stared at his hands. "I didn't mean to. I panicked. I wanted to wrap him in forgiveness, to pretend it didn't matter. But I remembered Sam, the way he didn't coddle me, didn't sugarcoat anything. He gave me the truth because he believed I was strong enough to take it. So I said, you made a bad call. And bad calls have consequences. Tears filled his eyes, and he nodded. What do I do now? I reached into my wallet and pulled out the last $20 I had until payday. Pressed it into his hand. You find the next right thing. And then the next one after that. He broke down, shoulders shaking. I stood up, ruffled his hair the way an older brother might, and walked away before he could see the tears stinging my own eyes. Not every ripple reaches the shore the way you hope. Not every soul you try to save is ready. But you do it anyway. Because somewhere out there, someone will be ready. And when they are, they'll remember the hand you offered. The sandwich. The chance. And maybe, just maybe, they'll pass it on. Years passed. Not all at once. Just one sunrise after another. One project, one paycheck, one stranger with hollow eyes and tired hands. I never saw Jesse again. Sometimes I wonder what became of him. Maybe he found his way back. Maybe he didn't. That's the thing about second chances, they don't come with guarantees. But I know this much, I gave him a moment. A door. A choice. The same way Sam gave one to me. And life kept moving. I moved up in the crew. Learned the business. Tommy started handing me more responsibilities, even let me manage some small sites. Said I had a way with people. I think he meant I understood what broken looks like. What hunger feels like. I'd seen rock bottom, and somehow that gave me a kind of authority no college degree ever could. Eventually, I started my own crew. Just 3 guys at first. Then 5. Then 10. Some were clean-cut, trying to get ahead. Some were like I used to be, ghosts in their own lives, just waiting for someone to see them. And I did. I always did. One winter afternoon, I was eating lunch in my truck when I saw a kid, couldn't have been more than 19, standing outside the fence, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning the site like he didn't know whether to come in or run. I rolled down the window. You looking for work? He startled. Maybe. You got boots? He looked down. Sneakers with holes. I popped the truck door open, stepped out, and handed him my extra pair from the back seat. Still dusty, still warm. He looked up at me, confused. Why are you helping me? I smiled, thinking of a diner. A sandwich. A question I'd once been asked. Because someone helped me, I said. And I think maybe it's your turn now. He followed me inside. I handed him a broom. The ripple kept moving. I never found Sam again. Not in any literal sense. But sometimes I'll be walking past a work site or sitting in traffic, and I'll catch a glimpse of a man with a cane or a worn leather jacket or those sharp, knowing eyes, and I'll wonder, was that him? Or maybe, just maybe, he's everywhere now. Maybe Sam wasn't just a man. Maybe he was a reminder. That hope doesn't come with fanfare. It walks in quietly, sits beside you, and hands you half a sandwich. It doesn't try to save you. It just believes in you long enough for you to start believing too. Sometimes people ask me how I turned my life around. They want a secret. A step-by-step plan. But there isn't one. All I can tell them is this. I was broken. I was lost. And someone saw me anyway. That's where everything changed. Not in a courtroom. Not in a rehab center. Not with a miracle. But with a stranger. A diner. A choice. And a question I now ask every man who walks onto my crew looking like he's about to fall apart. Are you done dying like this? Or are you finally ready to start living? Because that question saved my life. And now maybe it'll save theirs too.